Just one day after calling out the government, Brazil's environmental ministry received additional funding in its effort to prevent deforestation and wildfires in the Amazon region. On Friday, the ministry announced the funding used to combat deforestation had run out and all operations needed to be halted after the weekend. However, Brazil's vice president denied the claim, saying the operation would continue. Brazil has faced extreme criticism in recent months for the way it has handled the Amazon. Back in May, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro faced widespread international calls to take action against a string of wildfires racing through the rainforest. In an effort to control the massive wildfires, President Bolsonaro enacted Operation Green Brazil 2. That put the country's military in charge of protecting the Amazon. However, the Associated Press reports that this plan of action has actually had adverse effects on the Amazon. Under the control of the Brazilian army, deforestation continues to plague the rainforest, while investigations into the cause of these devastating wildfires have virtually come to a halt. AP News reporter and author of the article, Mauricio Savarisi, joins me now from Rio de Janeiro. Mauricio, thank you for joining us. So, from your findings, tell us, how is the military intervention hurting efforts to protect and preserve the very thing that they're supposed to be doing, the rainforest?
Well, we spent 2 weeks in the region. We saw very little presence of the military anywhere we went, except for some road projects that were actually led by military forces. In one of the raids that we followed, not raids, but one of the actions that we followed, a group of 5 military men, soldiers, followed firefighters to a very distant region of the state of Pará. And when they arrived at the gates of this property where there were massive blazes going into the woods, they basically didn't come in because there was a padlock that prohibited them from coming in. And in previous occasions, members of Brazil's enforcement agencies would just come in and extinguish the fires. That's not the case under Brazil's military, which are following strict orders from the president and from the vice president as well. We didn't see the army in any of the other raids in other states of the regions. We heard from Brazil's enforcement agents that the army has basically stopped them from making massive raids that call a lot of attention, that stop illegal mining, that stop deforestation in very isolated corners of the Amazon. So after 2 weeks, we were very comfortable in saying that it has taken the opposite effect.
So, Mauricio, is this an example of bureaucratic governmental incompetence, or is something more nefarious actually going on here?
Well, President Bolsonaro supports the development of the Amazon that is really tied to these operations taking place there. And you can see in the cities we went to, there was a massive support for the president. One of the cities we went to, Novo Progresso, 78% of the people voted for him in the 2018 elections, and they are all very supportive now. And that's because President Bolsonaro stimulates miners, farmers, ranchers, cattle raisers to do their business. And even if that collides with environmental regulations and laws, that doesn't seem to be stopping them. And they believe President Bolsonaro when he says that the Amazon needs more development, but they're at this moment, they're not seeing much of that. They're just seeing the beginning of an economy that is not that impressive, but it's enough for those people to survive.
Well, investigations and prosecutions of deforestation have also slowed to almost a halt under the command of the Brazilian army. Is the army actually equipped to properly protect the rainforest?
The army has had a long presence in the rainforest, and it has been in a supporting role for a long time. But it has never taken the lead in actions like this because it doesn't have the authority to fine or to seize property or to even to put some of those machineries on fire, because that's impossible to drag to the biggest cities in those isolated corners. So it feels as if the members of the military high up are not really happy about the things. That we heard one of them, General Carlos Alberto Santos Cruz, who is a former Bolsonaro minister, and he said that the army is good at supporting enforcement agents and not necessarily to lead those operations. And we haven't seen any big operations since May, when President Bolsonaro put the army in charge of the whole region. And it's very unclear whether we're going to see any of that until November, which is the last month in which this operation is going to be enforced.
Well, before this, the Brazilian Institute of Environment and Renewable Natural Resources had been the organization that was in charge of protecting the Amazon. Has that group had any role during this time, and how is the government restricting its abilities to carry out its mission?
Many of the heads of these agencies have been replaced by former policemen, former soldiers, generals, people that are very used to following orders, but who are not very keen on environmental enforcement, as many other agents that still operate there say. We heard many of them. We heard 9 former and current officials, and they say they have been put in places where they have little room to act. And that has been the main thing that the government has done. And whenever they have to come forward with an investigation, the army will say, well, it depends. Let's look more into this. Let's look more into that. And then in the end, nothing really happens. So they're very much unexcited about the future. And some of them fear for the worst for the Amazon. They fear the Amazon might be reaching a tipping point. Others say there will be clusters of green in the Amazon because if the deforestation continues at this rate, there won't be much left of the Amazon very soon.
Well, I want to follow up with you on that point specifically because I'd like you to remind us of the stakes. We all know that what happens in the Amazon affects the rest of the globe. If this is allowed to continue, how long until this damage might actually be irreparable?
Well, the scientists we heard, there's not a consensus, but scientists we heard say it could be at a tipping point in which it could develop into a tropical savanna within the next few decades because the production of carbon dioxide there might be just too much for the forest to hang on. And we've seen one of the reserves in that area we went to called Jamanchim. If you look at the map in 2006, it was totally green. And now it looks reddish mostly because the farmers, ranchers, cattle raisers, some miners are basically taking over. And one of the agents I talked to said that he believes Jamanchim will not be there in the next 10 years because the deforestation has been so massive. And you can see that in the city. You can see that in the city of Novo Progresso. You can see just the smoke coming from that very forest of Jamanchim. It's very hard to believe it's going to be there until some action is actually taken. We haven't seen much of that happening now.
All right. Mauricio Savarisi, thank you.
Thank you.